It is 1:30, so I will call the meeting of the McHenry County Zoning Board of Appeals to order. Today, the subject of our hearing is application number 2023-028, the applicant Plowshare Solar LLC. The request is for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. The PIN numbers for this petition are PIN 1624-300-008 and 1624-300-009. The address is on Anthony Road in Marengo, Illinois. The property consists of roughly 58 7/10 acres and is located on the south side of Anthony Road and the north side of Harmony Road, approximately 1,500 feet west of Maple Street in Riley Township. I would like to introduce the board, have them introduce each.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
may I make a statement, please?
certainly, Mr. Eldridge.
Thank you. In my capacity as administrator of the McHenry County Enterprise Zone, I do economic development for the city of Marengo. And in the light of the fact that the city of Marengo has formally opposed this petition, I think it appropriate that I recuse myself from this petition. Therefore, I will be leaving. I'm Charles Eldridge from the Township of Richland.
Okay, so we've had 5 people. We're still good to hold this hearing. So we'll have introductions starting on my left. Mr. Cozen.
Robert Cozen, Algonquin Township.
I'm Linnea Kustra from Alden Township.
Vicki Gardner, Nunda Township.
Kurt Schnabel, Riley Township.
Tom Jers, Coral Township.
This petition has been reviewed and the following items have been received prior to today's scheduled hearing. The publisher's certificate of publication from the newspaper is dated July 5th, 2023, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The affidavit of posting was signed and the date posted was July 7th, 2023, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The affidavit of mailing was signed and the date mailed was June 29, 2023, and thereby meets ordinance requirements. The survey has been checked against the petition, the legal notice, and publication in the newspaper, and all 3 match. The filing fees have been paid, the endangered species consultation has been received, and the McHenry County Soil and Water Conservation District report has been received. This would be NRI number 230504510. For those of you who haven't been to a zoning hearing before, I just want to go through a little bit of how this works. So the petitioner will present their case to us. They will be asked questions by members of the board, and then if staff has any questions, they will also ask questions. Then if any member of the public has a question, you can come up to the microphone here on my right. You have to give your name and your mailing address, and then you have 3 minutes to ask a question of their testimony. Then after that's done, after any other witnesses that they provide, the same thing will happen. And then when that is finished, then staff will present their report, and again, the board might have some questions for staff. When that is finished, then will be your opportunity if you want to make a statement. You know, the first part is questions only. But then you'll have 3 minutes if you'd like to make a statement regarding this petition at that time. So anyone who would be making a statement, asking a question, presenting testimony of any kind, at this time I'd like to swear you in if you would raise your right hand. This includes any members of the public who might want to speak. Do you solemnly affirm that the testimony you give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, before we start, I also just want to ask Renee just to fill us in on the changes that happened at the state in January, the state new requirements and why we had to change our ordinance. Would you fill us in, Renee, please?
Well, I think probably the best thing is just to read verbatim from the state law that was passed that's applicable to McHenry County. And in a nutshell, it is that a request for siting approval or special use permit for a commercial wind energy facility or a commercial solar energy facility or a modification of an approved siting or special use permit shall be approved if the request is in compliance with the standards and conditions imposed in this act. The zoning ordinance adopted consistent with this code and the conditions imposed under state and federal statutes and regulations. A county may not adopt zoning regulations that disallow permanently or temporarily commercial wind energy or commercial solar energy facilities from being developed or operated in any district zoned to allow agriculture or industrial uses.
Okay, so now I'm going to turn it over to the petitioner. Please introduce yourself and I'll give you a presentation.
Thank you, Chair. My name
I don't know if the microphone is on.
It's on.
It's on, okay.
Right.
Super.
Thank you, Chair. I'm John Carson. I'm the managing partner of Trajectory Energy Partners. Today for our presentation, I'll be following a PowerPoint. I left a folder at each of your seats containing a paper copy of this presentation plus some other materials that we'll be referring to today. We'd ask that that formally be entered into the record as well. And a number of our team members at Trajectory that I'll introduce in a minute will be speaking as well. I'll let them come to my seat when we're ready. I promise that I will be concise. I know that this board has heard many, many solar petitions. This is our first time in McHenry County, but we have done work all across the state. So I will try to focus on telling you a little bit more about our company, a little bit more about this specific site for Plowshare Solar. And so moving ahead to the next slide, simply this is a 5 megawatt community solar project in Riley Township. Let's go to the next slide. I know that you are very familiar with the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act that made all of this possible. One thing I'll highlight is that under community solar, what is new now under the new law is there are a number of specific programs, such as projects just for public schools, and another program I'll be referencing a couple times called community-driven community solar. Jumping to the next slide. Won't spend too much time on community solar credits. I have a couple slides later in the deck, but would be happy to answer questions on that. The new law, CEJA, actually made community solar subscriptions much simpler, and our team has very deep experience on this side of it as well. Jumping to slide 5, I want to take a little time to tell you about our company. So we are an Illinois-based solar developer. I live in Lake County, just east of here. We have a number of team members that I'll introduce briefly. Molly Snitcher, who is here, Abby Witt, a McHenry County resident, Hal Sprague, Matt Kopinski, and Gary Lee. A number of us will be hopping in to present different parts. 2 projects that we developed, I like to point to examples. Rockford Solar would probably be the closest operating project that we've developed. This is actually on land owned by the city of Rockford. If you jump to the next slide, a couple things about our company Trajectory I wanted to highlight. First of all, the projects we work on, we get the vast majority of them built. I know that dozens and dozens of projects have come before the McHenry County Board and before this ZBA. During 2017, 18, and 19, I can't imagine how many you heard, and most of them probably didn't get built. During that first lottery that you're probably familiar with, our team turned in 30 projects to that lottery, none of them in McHenry County. 25 of those projects are either fully built now, under construction, or will be completed next year. One example I like to give is a small county, Marshall County in central Illinois. A county of 15,000 people, 18 projects got permits in that county in 2018. 7 of them were ours. Of the 7 we permitted, 2 are already completed. 4 of those 7 will additionally be completed next year. Only 1 out of the 7 won't. Of the other 11 that other companies permitted, only 1 is going to get built and the rest have been abandoned. So we're an Illinois-based company that's here to stay and plan to see these projects through. Second, as an Illinois-based company, we build our projects with union labor and are very proud of providing well-paying middle-class construction jobs for these projects. Our Rockford project had everyone from IBEW to laborers, carpenters, operating engineers working on these projects. Another thing we're very proud of is our work with projects where the landowner itself is a public sector entity. We have projects where we have a lease with school districts. The Dixon Park District is a great example, City of Rockford, townships, counties, and I feel very proud of that work and the trust that we have from local public sector entities. And as an Illinois-based company, we're also very focused on building out jobs around all the different parts of this industry here in Illinois. There's a lot of work that you sometimes don't think of beyond the construction work that comes with these projects. We work with all Illinois-based land surveyors for these projects. Here in McHenry County and other parts of the state, the work on drain tile is incredibly important. We work with a Rochelle-based drain tile company, Huddleston McBride, who does all of our surveys and all of the repair on our projects. So we really think it's important to be building out all the parts of the economic engine around renewable energy. And then one piece that I'm going to be talking a little bit more about later on is understanding the state program and delivering for the communities that we work in. There is a new program called Community Driven Community Solar. We submitted 6 projects into that last year, and all 6 were selected by the state moving forward. Moving on to page 7. One thing I want to highlight is this is the original site map that we turned in with our application. If you'll go to the next slide, we made one addition. We'll be talking a little bit about the extensive outreach that we did for this project. And Riley Township Road Commissioner, Mr. Diamond, is here today. We noted in our conversations with him and in the formal letter that he submitted to the county that he has concerns about using Anthony Road as an entrance site for this project. And so we wanted to propose and would ask that this be reflected as our updated site design to identify an alternate access from Harmony Road, which is a county road. After this process, before we would go to a building permit, we would work with Mr. Diamond, and if it doesn't make sense to use Anthony Road, we would work with the county instead. And so we wanted to note that change. Molly, would there be anything you'd add on that topic?
I would just add, we talked to...
Molly, would you
Yes.
name and your title?
my name's Molly Cincher. I'm legal counsel with Trajectory Energy. And I would just note, we did speak to Kimberly Charlo about the change that we made to the site design, and she told us, as far as preserving access, all of the access approvals and road use agreements will come later, but as far as getting a zoning permit and this conditional use permit approved, that we just need to preserve the possibility of access on either side and have that reflected in the conditions.
We definitely understand Mr. Diamond's concerns with the level of aggregate extraction going on in Riley Township. Taking care of the township roads is a top priority, and we will pledge to either work with him to find a solution or work with the county to enter off of Harmony Road. I want to spend a minute on the next slide, slide 9, and talk about how this project is located inside of Riley Township. Two things that I'll be pointing to. In the packets that we provided you, we included the Riley Township land use plan that's on the Riley Township website. I really applaud Riley Township for being thoughtful about putting together a land use plan for the township. Not every township does that. Also want to refer to the staff report from the county that I imagine you all received. This location is a very interesting one. As I'm sure you're all aware, and as the staff report outlines, the city of Marengo has done extensive annexation to the south from where the main city is right now, all the way down and just past Interstate 90. And we do understand the city of Marengo's overall concerns of preserving this area for their expansion plans. I do want to point out, and you can see this in some of the following slides, all of the plans that the city of Marengo have do not involve these two parcels. They did not annex this parcel. The land does not have a pre-annexation agreement on it. The city's plans for any future water mains are not placed on our parcel. But I will say that if for some reason the city of Marengo wanted to work with us on locating a water main easement to the north or the west or the east, but as long as they didn't want to go right through the middle of the solar farm, that is something we've seen many times because of the setback distance between the property line and the fence line. That's absolutely something we could work with the city on. What's interesting about this location, and in a little bit we'll talk about the extensive conversations we had with the neighbors of the projects, you can see that the plans for the city of Marengo is office, retail, and industrial development to the east, to the west of our site, to the south of our site. Currently, and you can see this on the map, Ozinga has a very extensive gravel mine to the north of the site, and that is actually planned to be all north of Anthony Road. So in a certain aspect, the character of this area right now, local township and city have extensive plans to change. I know one of the concerns of one of the neighbors that we have talked to multiple times is about property values. We did include and would want this included in the record of property study. You've probably seen similar versions in the past. That show that when a solar farm is located near houses, and most of them are, it does not impact property values. But in addition, I would point to here that in a sense, this project will actually be preserving open space for the future. I really think that the staff report from McHenry County was thoughtful in identifying solar as a use for agricultural land that preserves it as an option for agriculture in the future. I suspect most of the construction happening west of this site will involve warehouses and trucking facilities. If it's an industrial use, that will probably not be able to turn back to agriculture for perhaps centuries. But a solar farm, after it's decommissioned, will be an option for agricultural use in the future. One of the other items that we included in our packet was a detailed study about the safety of these solar panels, detailing that even after the panels are ground into dime-sized bits and soaked in water with acid in it, only minuscule amounts of any metals are able to be extracted, and that the safety of these panels on the site will actually, when you consider the lack of pesticides and herbicides now being no longer applied to the land, will actually improve water quality in the site. And the staff report also identifies this area as an important one for that purpose. And one thing I did want to mention that was a concern of one of our neighbors is there are no batteries planned for this site. This is not a battery energy facility. I'll now move on to slide 10. A question we often get is, why is the project located here? The two simple reasons for any solar project are, number one, the circuits that are available, and second, the availability of land. If you go to the next slide, I'm not sure if you've seen this map before, but this is a map that is produced by ComEd that talks about where on their circuits do they have capacity to host renewable energy. I'm not real happy with the color scheme they picked, but basically the grayer areas and some of the yellow and orange, those can absorb lots of renewable energy, and the pink can't. And what you see in this map is that along Lake Michigan, in the Chicago area, if you actually had the land, there would be plenty of lines to put that energy on. Further west, where there's plenty of land, there are no high-capacity lines that can be utilized. McHenry County sits, and the reason you've seen all these applications is you sit right in the center of this. If you go to the next slide, and this map is publicly available. This is just McHenry County. What you can see here is a lot of that same gray right around Harvard, over in the eastern side, of course, where there's a little less land, but plenty of higher capacity lines. But then you have Marengo. If our engineer...
So, just to interrupt a little bit, so the gray shows a higher capacity?
Yes.
Okay. And then the purple being second?
No, the purple is the least.
Oh, the purple is the least, okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, it's
and
really hard to tell, by the.
I don't like their color scheme, but.
Yeah, so, yeah, just going through that, that's helpful, thank you.
And then the star is where our project is located. If the engineer on our team, James Svenstrup, was here, he could close his eyes and draw the electrical grid of McHenry County by heart, because it's a very interesting one. High voltage lines are coming in and dropping down to local high voltage feeder lines up north near Harvard, near Marengo, and then of course you're all probably quite familiar with the enormous substation here near just south of Woodstock. And in fact, that feeder line out of Marengo actually provides the energy for a good part of DeKalb County, almost all the way down to Sycamore, a good chunk of Kane County. And that is why you see a lot of applications here. Perhaps you might be remembering some hearings you had for projects located in the purple area that never got built, sort of disappeared. That's probably why. So one thing we take into account when we cite these projects is really understanding what the capacity is to get these projects built. So jumping to the next slide. I now want to talk a little bit about community-driven community solar. When the first law passed in 2016 and it was implemented, you all might remember a bunch of applications were submitted after getting a zoning approval, and then they held a lottery. And it didn't matter if that was a well-deserving project or not. They used a lottery, and that's how projects were selected. When they passed the new law in 2021, the legislature felt like that wasn't a very fair method. But there's kind of a saying that sometimes the government solution to fairness is complexity. So they made this new law incredibly complex. So first of all, there's a pot of funds that is just for projects that are physically located on land owned by a public school, for instance. We've done a couple of those projects, and instead of waiting for a lottery, that's how it was selected. There's another program called Community-Driven Community Solar that was meant to support projects that have more extensive community involvement, to make sure that subscribers are located locally, that provide extra support for community organizations, and have a real focus on job training. And if you jump to the next slide, that program opened up for the first time in 2022. There were 68 projects that were submitted, and our company submitted 6 projects, and all of them were selected. In fact, of the about 15 projects that were entered in Ameren, we had the top 2 highest scoring projects. What they did was listed out a long list of criteria. We put together over 100-page applications. I've got an example there if you want to see one. And in ComEd, we had 4 of the top 5 scoring projects. Some examples of these in one of our projects in Rockford, our community partner was Habitat for Humanity. We'll be making a donation to Habitat for Humanity when the project is built, and we'll make sure that those subscription savings go to Habitat for Humanity families. Another of our projects we're really proud of, the top scoring project in ComEd, the landowner is the Dixon Park District. And this project is right in the heart of Dixon, surrounded by houses and park facilities on all sides. When this project is selected, we'll be making a donation to the Park District, and they will become the first 100% solar-powered park district in the state. And I want to talk a little bit, or have actually Abby Witt on our team talk about our partner here in McHenry County for Plowshare Solar.
Thank you, John. My name is Abby Witt. I'm the Director of External Affairs for Trajectory Energy Partners. So as John just mentioned, one of the litmus tests for a community-driven community solar project is to designate a partner and establish a long-term commitment with the community that the project will be based in. So for Plowshare Solar, we are pleased to be working with the environmental defenders of McHenry County, who have 5 decades of experience in conservation and land management. So if this project is awarded and moves forward, we'll spend the next several years working with them to expand their capacity, specifically in Riley Township. And we're particularly excited about this for a few reasons. One of which is Trajectory prides itself on being a good steward of the land that we lease and build projects on. John mentioned the availability to turn this land back into farmland, and we would like to do everything possible to ensure that that happens. And then the second is that in the Riley land use plan that was posted on the website that's in your packets and we'll talk a little bit more about, they talk about conservation as a priority. And so we'd like to ensure that we're working towards that value. And then finally, and just from my perspective, John mentioned I'm a McHenry County resident. I live up in Nunda Township. And I think we have an exciting opportunity here to show and model that community development and solar go hand in hand. And so excited for all of those reasons to work with the defenders on this project.
Great, and now we'd like to talk a little bit about the outreach that we always do at Trajectory, but have done especially on this project. We'll have Hal and Mac come up to the table.
Do you hear me? All right. Sometimes my voice is a little bit low for mics, but yeah, so I wanted to talk, Matt Kopinski, Project Development Manager with Trajectory Energy. I serve our northern Illinois counties. That includes McHenry County. So I want to talk a little bit about the some of the neighbor outreach that we did.
I can point to the map.
Point to the map. Oh, you got it. Okay. So starting with the northwest, we spoke with a gentleman there who was generally very supportive of the project. It was kind of a sentiment that we heard over and over when we did our door knocking, with a couple of exceptions, which I'll talk about. He was excited about the opportunity to potentially subscribe to the project and receive a discount on electricity savings. The other thing that we heard a lot of was they're thankful that it's going to be solar and a very quiet neighbor. Two kind of neighbors that I want to talk about in particular, one of which is here today. Jamie, thank you again for the opportunity to meet with you and your husband. I had the opportunity to meet with Jamie and talk through some of her concerns, and hopeful that will address some of her additional concerns today. One of the big ones that we heard was concern about glare. You may or may not be aware, the neighbor to the east is the actually owner of a landing strip. So we had the opportunity to meet with this neighbor's name was Randy. He expressed no concerns about the project. Again, echoed the sentiment of thankful to have a quiet neighbor. He mentioned that he's flown over multiple solar installations, has never noticed a glare issue. And in addition to that, we conducted an internal glare study, which found no issues with glare as it relates to the incoming plants. Hal, did you want to talk about some of the other outreach?
Sure. So I'm Hal Sprague. I'm Community Engagement Manager at Trajectory. I want to do two things. I want to explain, first of all, what it is we do when we say we're door knocking. We actually go to the houses all around, the closest houses to the project, and if there is no one there, we take our simplest page out of our folders, which has the picture of where the project is, describes community solar. We write a note on it and leave it on the doorstep saying, sorry, we missed you. Here's our contact information. If you have any questions, please get in touch with us. If somebody does answer the door and we get a chance to talk to them, we give them our entire packet, which includes that piece of paper, a slide deck with 10 or 15 pages of more detailed information, and also a solar overview that answers a lot of the questions that people typically ask. So we hand that to them, and they can, again, get back to us with more questions if they have any. So I also wanted to tell you who I talked to. Mac and I talked to people together just for a minute, and we talked to Randy, and one house that was empty, or there was no one there in the northeast. I then went down on Maple on the east side, and there was no one in the house there, but the person up in the northeast, there was one house there, and there was a young man who said, yes, my parents live here. They are renters. They know what solar is. They have absolutely no problem with this, so thank you very much. Took the packet, said we'll get back to you if we have any questions. There was a farmer on the south, right there, who also took the packet. He was standing in his driveway with a partner, and we talked for a little bit, and he said, you know, I really don't have any concerns about the solar project. He said, my problem is different. I have some water issues along the road here, but you know, we don't have any thing to say really about the solar project because it's not really something we're terribly worried about looking at. And then finally, the property that you can't see on that map, it's the horse farm that's over next to Route 23. The gentleman there, again, answered the door, took the packet, talked for a few minutes with me. He said, thank you very much. I will look at your materials. I don't really have any concerns at all, but thank you for coming. So those are the typical answers that I got when I met with the people there. But I also wanted to go over some of the other outreach that we've done. It goes actually back to the beginning of June when I first, probably before that, but the ones I would mention are calling the Riley Township Supervisor, Karen Schnabel, in early June and talking with her for a while. And we actually met the next day in her office, talked to her a while then, and she invited me to a trustees meeting saying, this is where you might meet more people that you could talk to and explain it so that it isn't just me, Karen, listening to you. So I tried to make the June 19th meeting, but I missed that. But we then talked again, and I did go to a later meeting on July 11th. Mac and I both attended a trustees meeting on July 11th at the Riley Township Hall and had a presentation there and got questions and answers at that meeting. That was very useful. Also later in June, I talked to Dave Diamond on the phone briefly, and then also I got hold of the new superintendent of the school district. As you know, Riley's got a consolidated community school right in the downtown area, and the new superintendent, his name is Jason Gray. He was very pleasant and said, you know, I would love it if you would come to one of our school board meetings. So we did that, or I did that, I should say, on July 12th, the night after the trustees meeting, and made a presentation very much like, you know, we're doing here to the school board, questions and answers, and other than that, it was very pleasant and professional. No big concerns from that meeting. But again, quite a number of people listening locally to the issues. I also went by the Fire Protection District, which covers Riley Township, which is in Marengo. Talked to the fire chief and gave him the packet and explained the project. And he said, you know, I'm very familiar with these sites. We have all the right equipment. It's not anything different than we would deal with when there was a substation or farm equipment or anything like that, so I have no concerns. And this, we had an open house on Wednesday the 19th in the library in Marengo, and several people were there listening to the presentation. Similar things, they had lots of questions, but went through that same, you know, back and forth and informed people. No opposition really from those people. Some of them very positive about it. Not all of them live in Riley Township, but some in Coral and some in Marengo. So that was a good spattering of local residents. And this outreach continues. Yesterday I spent about an hour and 15 minutes in somebody's house in their living room in Riley Township describing the project to them and their friend and their husband, and we did the same kind of outreach with them, and they were very positive, said they were favorable to the project. So I think that's about it. If you have any questions about outreach, I'd be happy to answer those. Thank you.
All right, on the next slide, I imagine you've seen these pictures 500 times, so I won't spend time on it. This is a typical tracker system of a solar project. In the packet, Hal talked about, we have a long document called the Solar Overview document that answers typical questions, but we'll be happy to answer anything here. If you go to the next slide. Construction, again, you have seen a few of these built here in McHenry County. Our closest project that just completed construction that we developed is actually in Boone County, in the village of Poplar Grove. We've done a number of these projects where the village is actually the AHJ. But again, I imagine you've heard all about this before. So let's go to the next slide. And I'll turn it over to Molly now to detail how our application followed both the state law and your new ordinance.
Yeah, so as far as the site design, you can tell here that we complied with all of the setback requirements, but we actually did a greater setback as far as to the residents, and we also did a greater setback from the right-of-way, about 100 more feet from the road there that you can see. Another thing to point out, you can't see it on this smaller map here, but you can see it over there that obviously on the south we are very far away from Harmony Road and quite far setback from the parcel line there. And there are 2 parcels here where that notch on the outside is, that's kind of the dividing line on the south of those 2 parcels. And there is no setback requirement for participating properties within the solar project, so there's no setback within those 2 parcels. As far as fencing, we have a National Electric Code compliant fence that will be at least 7 feet high, and Knox boxes and keys will be provided for all emergency personnel access. And as far as our screening, for all homes within or non-participating residences and from the road right of way, anything within 500 feet, you can see that green, sorry. You can see that the green line all across there, that is what we have measured to be 500 feet, so that is all of the area where we are proposing screening. And these are examples of the native shrubs that we have proposed as the screening, which is in compliance with the ordinance. We worked with a outside consultant to evaluate our NRI report, the soils, and propose something that she thought would be really compatible with the environment in this area specifically. In general.
Yep. And to the next slide. The site will be planted in a pollinator-friendly ground cover. One slide we included in your packet, we got a question after we printed them about the fence. We typically do not actually use a chain link fence. This is a nice example of what's sometimes called a farm fence. It's wooden posts with more of a square wire. We think that's a much better look and fits well with the pollinators. Going to the next slide. Again, you've probably heard a lot about the benefits of these solar projects. We will be building it with union labor, and one thing that's often missed is that the majority of the funds spent on these projects is actually for labor. One thing I want to mention about this community-driven community solar project, most of the projects you approved in McHenry County, there's typically no requirement that the subscriber savings happen anywhere near here. You might have built a project here, and maybe people in Chicago or Freeport are all of the subscribers. Through this program, we are required to deliver these benefits to McHenry County and specifically Riley Township residents. Just yesterday, I was in the little village of New Milford in Winnebago County, where it's only 600 acres in the town, and we're building a 28-acre solar farm. And working with the village, it's the exact same program, community-driven. The village is going to use those subscriptions, which will save people 20% on their utility bill, to actually entice businesses to move to the village New Milford, and we'd be thrilled to work with McHenry County and Riley Township on that as well. Jumping to the next slide. This details out, and I think is a good example of the increase in property tax revenue that you see from these projects. Currently, the last year, these 2 parcels were paying $1,700 in taxes. Over the life of this project, it'd be $800,000, $34,000 just in the first year. We did note that that was a specific goal in the Riley Township land use plan to increase the tax base. Specifically focused on that I-90 and Illinois Route 23 corridor where this project is located.
And what is this, the total life?
40 years. Going to the next slide, I won't spend much time here, but if you do have any questions on how community solar credits work, if you go to the next slide, those are actually my personal bills. That's my personal ComEd bill and my personal community solar subscription, showing how that 20% discount rate works. I won't focus on it. You've probably heard it 100 times, but if during questions, we can come back to this slide if there are any. And then to the next slide, I'll have Molly briefly talk about decommissioning.
Yep, so we did turn in a agricultural impact mitigation agreement that we entered into with the Illinois Department of Agriculture. Obviously, that has a lot of steps in the decommissioning of the solar site at the end of the life, removal of all the modules and piles and the racking, and then basically redeveloping and stabilizing the site in order to be able to return it back to agricultural use. So we have entered that agreement already with Department of Agriculture, and then we will also have a separate decommissioning plan that will be submitted as part of the building permit.
And jumping to the next slide, one really important topic we get a lot of questions about is the recycling of these solar panels in particular. The vast majority of them are glass and aluminum, which are recyclable, and the steel pilings and other wire is. But as both an industry association here in Illinois, this is a slide from ICEA, and as a company, this is something that we're very focused on. We do a lot of work near Pontiac and Livingston County, which is the home of the largest landfill in Illinois, and as a company and an industry, we're committed to making sure keeping these panels out of those landfills. So I'll end there, maybe stop on the next slide, our site map. We're excited to be here in McHenry County as an Illinois-based company. We're not going anywhere. We are hoping to do a number of projects in the county and really appreciate the thoughtfulness of your county staff, the ordinance that you put together, and look forward to working with you.
Okay, we'll start with questions from the board. On my left, Mr. Cozen. If you have more later, I can come back to you.
Didn't know which way you were pitching. Can we talk a little bit more about the company? Is it a private company? How long it's been in existence, publicly traded and so forth?
Absolutely. We're a privately held company. There's a team of 5 co-founders and managers, and we started in spring of 2017 when the project, when the first Illinois law was passed.
I hate to be so informal, but Molly, are you in-house counsel or are you associated with a firm?
Yes, I'm in-house counsel.
For the utilities that you, for the facilities that you are presently in operation, are they all connected to Commonwealth Edison?
Yes, the 2 that are currently operating are in ComEd. Right now, there's 14 projects that we developed that are under construction right now, and about half of those are in Ameren and the other half in ComEd.
My geography, could you help me with, where is Fond du Lac Township?
That is East Peoria, Illinois, just across the river from Peoria.
Which subscription services on the consumer side are you affiliated with or utilize?
So on subscriptions, for the projects we own and operate, we work with a third-party subscription company, typically work with a company called Solstice. A lot of the subscription work that we do is around events, meeting people one-on-one. We've also done a lot of work, for instance, with OSF Healthcare. They're a great example of a large electricity user that doesn't always have room for solar on-site, but can take advantage of community solar.
So would the subscription service promote your facility or just promote the savings if the consumer is interested in supporting Riley Township?
No, that's a very good question. So we would, as part of our community-driven community solar application, number 1, we'll be working closely with the McHenry County environmental defenders, and we will have a staff person based here in McHenry County to specifically talk about plowshare solar. We're committing to a higher savings rate than you typically see. So our team will be specifically talking about this particular project and signing people up for that.
You mentioned utility service acceptability for a water main. Does that acceptability also include potential sanitary and other related facilities?
Yes, anything that could fit in that right-of-way space or even our setback area between the fence and either the property lines or Harmony or Anthony Road.
But I would note that we don't, wouldn't be a user of sewer or
Right.
water. We need the electrical utility. So as far as it's not something our project would need.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for the clarification and a very generous offer of private property as well. You described a process of grounding. Could you elaborate where that was? This is where you were grounding items up into a diamond shape?
Oh, yes. In the packet that we provided you, a concern we get a lot is about the safety of these panels. Particularly, there are a lot of questions about the safety of these panels and groundwater. McHenry County has some very important aquifers. That study is in the packet that we provided. That was a review of a number of studies, and what they did was actually take panels and grind them up into dime-sized pieces and put them in acid water to see if they could even get any heavy metals to leach out. But they really only see minuscule amounts of any metals, an order of magnitude or more below any national or state safety levels. And this is what that study looks like. It's in the back of your left side of your packet.
Maybe I don't have the benefit of a Molly next to me, so I have to
Yeah.
rely
No
on
problem.
it later on. In terms of the representation of prohibiting batteries, is that something that you wish to stipulate for the life of the project?
Yes, we'd be happy to say that this facility will not be a battery energy storage facility. And if you wanted to add that as a condition, that's just fine.
I respect the pronoun, but it's actually a collective board that would have to make that decision. How did you select the environmental defenders as a beneficiary of your community outreach?
We have been very familiar with them for the whole 6 years we've been a company. I think it's really fantastic that they're an organization that has been very focused on conservation in the county, that they work across the county, and that they're also very focused on helping McHenry County benefit in a positive way from the clean energy economy. We've known them for a while, and given the work that we did in other communities through this program last year, we felt they were a natural fit.
In terms of the actual components, I don't recall subject discussion on noise. Did I overlook that, or is there elements in the package that you could call our attention to?
Yeah, so in our application, we
Identify yourself.
Oh, yes, Molly Snitcher, legal counsel. In our application, we address that we'll comply with the Illinois Pollution Control Board noise requirements. And those are set by, the level of frequency and the decibel level that we are emitting. We will determine based off of, the product specifications and specific electrical equipment that we'll be using, that we will comply with that noise requirement. But as far as, we basically will determine that, or have a study done at the building permit stage that will kind of determine exactly where we can put those panels, or put the electrical equipment on the property and can make sure that we're complying with the noise requirements.
And in anticipation of that, one thing you'll actually note on our detailed site plan is an inverter setback of 325 feet from the property line, that this shows that there would not be any inverters closer to the homes on either side, which in our experience more than complies with the state code.
And then with that, thank you for the segue, how many inverters will be on the site?
This project is a 5 megawatt project. It would probably typically be a little over 2 dozen.
And the number of transformers on the site?
Just one. It'd be one connection to the grid.
Just for a moment of some deep dive.
Yeah.
What is the cooling methodology used for those dozen inverters?
They have little fans on them, and that is simply where the noise comes from. If you stand about 3 feet away, they're at about 50 decibels, but at 325 feet, you can't hear them past the fence line.
So am I correct in that presentation that the closest inverter to the property line is 350 feet?
Yes, the 325 is what that white line is showing.
25 feet of my friend, so to speak. In terms of the movement of the panels,
Yep.
do they track?
They will, yep. This is a very flat site, and we'll be using the north-south rows that track east to west.
And are they bi-reflective? Meaning they
Yes,
draw from both sides?
It's pretty much standard now that all projects built in Noy are bifacial. During the winter, you get actually a fair amount of extra energy from underneath.
And so, just to clarify, there's no operation of the facility beyond sunset or before active sunrise?
That's right, and I'm glad you brought that up. It was a concern of one of our neighbors. There's no lighting at this site at night. At the end of the day, the panels slowly reset themselves to be ready for the morning, and the facility is not lighted at night.
In terms of the site design, it has this peculiar, at least in my eyes, a bump out on the western edge. Can you give an overview on what was the design consideration for that?
Yes. What that is, so this, as you can imagine, this used to be a full 80, 240s north and south. And what happened is, well, it's a little easier if I jump up here. So all of this used to be a full 80. This parcel was sold off years ago, and there's a home on it now. And then this is actually one long parcel. So essentially, this is just a leftover component from the original 80. And that is one of the advantages of solar projects. They're kind of modular, they're kind of like Legos. One thing we don't like to do is leave our landowners with any unfarmable areas. It's possible in the final design this part wouldn't be used, but we'd still be paying our landowner rent on that component and maintain it and make sure that there weren't weeds in it.
Well, then following that question, why was the facility not located along Harmony Road as opposed to its present location?
The electrical equipment for ComEd is on the north side, and that was the main consideration. After talking with Mr. Diamond and his concerns, we did want to note that we might have an alternate access from the south.
From a roadway access, but from
Yeah.
utility access, it's ComEd.
It has to be on the north, yep. That's where the three-phase line is.
There was reference made to a glare study.
Mhm.
What was the basis, the format used for that glare study?
Mac, do you want to talk a little bit about the Forge online tool?
Mac Trajectory Energy, project developer. Yeah, so we utilized, it's an industry standard tool called Forge Solar. Basically what it allows you to do is set up the location of the system and then include inputs for various different flight paths. And then it will measure different kinds of glare. And I'm not an expert in this, but there's like a green glare, yellow glare with various levels of propensity to cause an issue. And with the current flight path, the determination from the software was that there was no issue posed with glare to the incoming flight paths from planes to the south.
And accommodating the panel arrangement throughout the 12 hours solar
Yep,
workday?
exactly, yep.
And is this something similar that the FAA would have applied around airports?
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same software, so it's FAA compliant, and just about any third-party engineering firm that you speak with will use that same software to get that FAA approval.
Madam Chairman, I just have two more questions, but he looks so
That's
comfortable.
fine.
I'll let him come back to the audience. On the taxes and the revenue chart, just to be clear that we're reading this right, it says the year one solar taxes, is that correct that there's some $23,000 projected for the two school districts?
Yes, it is. As I imagine, in McHenry County, you have at least a handful of operating systems now. And also included in your packet is a tax document from the state of Illinois that details exactly how these projects are assessed. It's $218,000 per megawatt times inflation times the 1/3 assessment rate here in Illinois. And this is very typical. You can see this is essentially 20 times more than is currently being paid in agricultural taxes. The mill rate in Riley Township did recently go up over the last year, and so as that mill rate goes up, that's how the assessment is made.
But the valuation of the farm is set by the state, is that correct?
It is, yep. There's a 218,000 per megawatt. There's a depreciation of 4% a year with a floor of 30%, and that's how the taxes over the life of the solar project.
So by the 10th year, reach 30% less the first year, is that how I?
It drops 4% a year in depreciation, but it goes up with CPI. So in fact, for solar farms across the state, the last 2 years, the overall assessment went up despite depreciation. But that depreciation levels out around year 18 at 30% of the original value and doesn't drop below that.
In terms of the subscribers, you note that the subscribers will be drawn from Riley Township. So if you have a subscriber from Algonquin Township, we would be barred from?
No, actually, anywhere in McHenry County. And we will focus an extra push working with the Defenders Group on Riley Township.
You had mentioned notable examples of which the entire benefit was acquired by a public entity to which then would be dispersed. Is this something like a Taylor Swift concert where the first one to the mill gets all the benefits, or how will you distribute the benefits equitably throughout the township?
We will work with the McHenry County Environmental Defenders on that to identify opportunities to use some of this funding for perhaps a pilot project on energy efficiency, a behind-the-meter solar system. One of our 6 projects that were selected last year is in Pekin, Illinois. The city of Pekin owns it, and we're setting up a very similar system with them. But we will absolutely continue to work with the township trustees, the local school district. We would really love, as the first community-driven community solar project in McHenry County that we're aware of, we'd really like to make this a good model.
In the example, applaud you for in this day and age of privacy of putting up your electric bill, you represent that you are a resident of Lake County. Would the rate that you demonstrated be similar to a resident in McHenry County?
Yes.
Even though the transmission distance between the solar farm and your residence is far greater?
This is a really important part of community solar. If you were a large, data center and you were, getting energy from a 100 megawatt power project, that distance matters greatly. But with community solar, it doesn't matter as long as the panels and the subscriber are in the same territory. So there's a positive side to that, but the negative side is that I suspect your handful of projects that have been built here in McHenry County, can any one of you name someone who's subscribed to a solar project in McHenry County? Probably not. It's why. Oh, good. I'm glad there's a few. But under this program, we'll be focused on McHenry County subscribers.
Madam Chairman, I've concluded my list. Thank you.
Ms. Gardner.
Well, Mr. Cozen took so long that I now have a whole bunch more questions. No, I don't have too many, but I'd like to get through as much as I can. First of all, I wanted to talk to you about the Rockford site.
Yeah,
Now, is that a site that's up and running right now?
it is.
And how long has it been up?
It was energized in spring of 2022.
So a couple years, well, year.
Yeah, a little over a year.
Okay. And everything's going fine?
It is. That particular project is part of what's called the Illinois Solar for All project. So those subscribers are all Rockford area low-income families. And then the Rockford Housing Authority is what's called the anchor subscriber. On one of their facilities, they're saving about $12,000 a year from that project. And then the landowner in that case is actually the city itself.
Okay, so this project is actually built right in the city of Rockford, is that right?
That's right. It's in the 7th Ward. There are houses on the north and east side and commercial units and factories right adjacent to it on the west.
Okay. Now, you did say that you get most of your projects that are proposed built. In fact, it sounded like 80 to 90% at least.
Yeah.
What would prevent this project from being built?
Well, first, if you didn't grant us a special use permit.
Which you know we, oh, go ahead.
On interconnection, we wouldn't be here in front of you if we didn't see a path that there's space on the Marengo substation. If I can be blunt about it, there's some people sitting on that queue who've probably gotten a special use permit from you that we do not believe will ever be built. So we are confident that there is space on the Marengo substation. And then we have gotten quite good at a company in navigating the very complex state programs. If the community-driven community solar program didn't select this project for some reason, although we have a very good track record, there's other programs that we could still deliver the same benefits. And so when we look at these projects, we're really thinking out, years out. We ask our landowners for a 6-year option period because we know it can sometimes take that long, and really think about those different paths.
So through your experience, and it sounds like you're quite experienced with this particular type of business, you've pretty much got the process down pat, is what you're saying. So if, now you have to meet a certain criteria for the state,
Yeah.
according to points, is that right?
And that's right, and I do think that's an improvement over the first state law, where they just said if you meet a minimum bar, we're gonna hold a lottery and see who gets picked. So I do think having these subjective and quantifiable criteria, for this particular program, there's 13 different criteria that we have to fill out over a 100-page application for to get selected.
Okay. You are the first petition that we've heard that is actually, I think I'm right about this, that's in partnership with various entities. So that obviously is one of the criteria that you meet, is that right?
That's right. You've probably heard other companies talk about they want to grow hay underneath the panels.
We did hear that, yes.
And that's a different program they call that traditional community solar, and that is a different point system. Community-driven community solar is much more focused on the benefits that you provide from the project.
Okay. And speaking of that, you're planning on growing what under these panels?
Pollinator-friendly ground cover.
Okay, and how will that be maintained?
So a really important point about that is that you still do have to mow it every year.
Mhm.
At the end of the season, you need to make sure you get all that vegetation off, so you don't mow it anywhere near as often as you would just a grass turf, but you do have to mow it at the end of the season. And in those first 3 years in particular, you really have to get out there and make sure you're eliminating any weeds. And once you get a really solid both native grasses and forbs underneath it, it really can look quite nice.
Okay. Now, these aren't annual plants, these are perennials. is
They're
that right?
perennials, and
Okay.
so caution I always like to give is it doesn't look as pretty as this in the first year.
I was gonna say, that's a nice picture, but
I grew up
it's
on
gonna look more like weeds, right?
if there are weeds out there, we have to go out and
Yeah.
take them out.
And on that note, you're aware that the county has a specific plan for pollinator-friendly plantings and so forth around these sites, yes?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I
'Cause
really,
I know you said you
yeah.
put some work into consulting with someone to get the right mix and so on and so forth, but,
Well, we shared the county's details
Okay.
with them. I also want to
Perfect.
commend the county on your screening requirements. I
Yes.
think focusing on native shrubs and smaller plants like that provide plenty of visual screening, but frankly, as someone who grew up on a farm myself, I think it's much better than planting pine trees out in the middle next to someone else's field.
yes, okay, thank you. Now, I don't remember if I asked you or not, so forgive me if I already did ask you this, but going back to the Rockford site.
Yeah.
How long did it take to actually build it?
That project, we first talked to the city of Rockford in spring of 2017. We had the lease and the zoning done by spring of 2019. It was planned to start construction in mid-2020. Pandemic slowed that down, but it did start construction in spring of 21. So it took about a year. for
To
that.
build it?
Yeah.
okay, from this point on, like, say, you're at the hearing for the Rockford plant, from that point on, it took almost 4 years, though, yes?
3.5, yeah.
3.5 years,
Yeah.
okay. So I'm just trying to get a feel for the people here, you know, if this does get approved, when can they look for this actually going up and running?
Absolutely. So the next step is on August 30th, we will be applying to that community-driven community solar program. We'd expect to see results come out in maybe February of next year. It takes the state that long to read our 100-page applications.
I've read a lot of your stuff already.
At that point, McHenry County appropriately has a very fulsome building permit process. We have to get all of our ducks in a row on many, many fronts, from drain tile to stormwater to everything else. And so we honestly wouldn't anticipate construction starting until the earliest, in a best case scenario, fall of '24, more likely spring of 2025.
Okay, so at least a year and a half from now?
Yes.
Okay. And that's if it is a go?
And if it wasn't a go through that program, we would apply to another program, and with our landowner have a 6-year option period on the site.
Okay, so where there's a will, there's a way. You're going to
And that's
do
the
this.
number one way that we've gotten all our projects built across the state. We're based here in Illinois, we aren't going anywhere, and we pick good sites and stick to them.
Okay. Now, we got information from Riley Township, who had concerns about the road, and I know you're working with them regarding your access, right? And also, it makes me wonder, how heavy are your trucks that'll be doing the construction? Are our roads up to the weight of these trucks?
Absolutely, that is something we will talk to the township about, and I think the town, Mr. Diamond noted that Harmony Road is built to much greater standards. That is why we asked for the alternate access. These are definitely lighter than dump truck hauling gravel out of the Ozinga mine. The heaviest we have is a semi loaded with solar panels. We also, whatever road we use, we have to have a road use agreement put in place.
Right.
But absolutely understand the work the township has done in a challenging environment with that much mineral extraction going on. And we'll make sure that it either works for them or we'll use Harmony Road with the county.
Okay. Also, there were some concerns about the fencing that you're thinking of using, which, you know, I have no problem with the fence itself, but they were concerned with the fence site being too far from the road, that I think that's what it was, but I'm sure Mr. Diamond can correct me if I'm wrong, that it could cause problems with snow drifting and so on and so forth. Have you put any thought into that?
We did, and first of all, that is why we provided the extra slide showing a little bit more about what a farm-style fence can be. The screening is planted in front of that. We did actually have a larger setback on the north than the state law required, but I think it was a very valid concern by the township. They would know best what the typical wind patterns are in snow drifting, and during the building permit process, we would work with them to set it back a little further if we needed to.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, site maintenance and screening of site. I think that's all I have for now. Thank you very much.
Mr. Schnabel.
Yes, good afternoon. I'm going to try to keep my questions somewhat limited for now, but could we go back to the screening slide with the vegetation? I believe I saw elderberries and dogwoods.
Yes.
Now, is that your idea, or is that what we are, I'm asking staff now, is that what we are currently requiring for screening?
For screening, the minimum requirement is our native shrubs. And it's what we've seen a lot of is arborvitae, and it's my understanding that somehow arborvitae is native, but these would be native shrubs.
I don't consider elderberry to be a shrub. Those are both weeds. I've got those growing in my backyard. I have to cut them down with the tractor every week or two. Anyway, that's just my comments. So if we do decide to move ahead with your project, I may want to have a further conversation on the screening.
Absolutely.
Since Ms. Gardner brought it up to begin with, who is farming the site right now?
I do not recall the name of the tenant farmer that's currently farming it.
And who owns the land right now?
Mr. Lyle Haig, he lives in Cook County, Illinois.
My next question is concerning the landing strip. I haven't heard a great deal of concern about the landing strip. This is a very, very active landing strip, especially in the mornings and the evenings when the farmers need their crop dusting done. As I look at the site plan, it looks to me, correct me if I'm wrong, like the landing strip itself actually touches that property line that's shared with your proposed development. And if that is true, from the red line to the west, it looks like 25 feet would be the 7-foot tall agricultural style fence, and then another 25 feet effectively to the panel installation.
That's right.
Themselves. Perhaps I missed it. When your panels are at their full upright position at one part of the day or another, it seems to me most of the installations that we've seen for your type of system would be about maximum 12 to 15 feet
That's right.
tall.
Yep.
So we would be in that range.
Yeah, closer to 12 at max, but yes.
Well, we'll say 15, just to allow a little wiggle room on that. So you're going to have 15-foot tall panels and a 7-foot fence within 50 feet of an active landing strip for small, like biplanes, literally. It looks like something out of an antiquities show sometimes when you see some of these aircraft. I see them go over my house. Has anyone had any concerns with that at all? That's really my question.
I'll actually ask Mac to come back up. Mac and Hal spoke with our neighbor here who runs the site. Well, Mac's coming up. I'll just note that solar is very common around airports all over the country. In our solar overview, we've got an example of the Indiana airport. That landing strip is 160 feet wide, is the width of our neighbors.
I agree with you that solar installations are quite possible in many airports, but I don't recall landing on my 747 and seeing solar panels 50 foot from the edge of the airstrip. That's my concern.
Yep.
We do get a lot of gusty winds out there sometimes too.
Mm-hmm.
Things do get blown off course from time to time. I'd like to know what the potential impacts would be if you did have a plane nosedive into your facility there. I'd just like to have the discussion, if nothing else.
Yeah, Mac Kapinski, Trajectory Energy. We spoke with the owner of the airstrip. He had already reviewed the solar plans when they were submitted, and he expressed no concerns whatsoever. In fact, if I recall correctly, he even has some trees on his property on the northern side that still touch the landing strip. But no, we haven't gotten any concerns at all.
If that is an item that you wanted to add a condition that we review further with the county staff.
I'd like to know, is there any type of FAA requirement that we need to be aware of before we would approve a proposal like this? I realize it's a rural airstrip, but it's been there forever. I don't know if McHenry County Planning and Zoning recognizes that airstrip as any type of special use tied to that property or not. Would anyone on staff know that?
There is a conditional use for that airstrip, yes. And I'm thumbing through the ordinance right now. In our principal use standards, we do say that a commercial, well, that's wind energy. So the state did make a provision for wind energy to have additional FAA protection and analysis, but not for solar, just for wind.
We did internally do an FAA notice criteria study, and it didn't come up within that area. I don't know if that is.
I would like to know more about that, perhaps not right this moment, but
And we can provide that document as well.
That would be great, I'd like that, thank you. I'll pass on to my colleague, Mr. Juris.
Thank you. Hello, is this working? Yeah. Okay. What Kurt had just talked about, the airstrip and the conditional use permit, I was unaware of it, but you said, this Randy Ferris, I know the guy, but he's got a special use permit for his airstrip. How many years is that?
Oh, gosh, I don't know. I'll work on that. I'll get you an answer.
I'm curious, because he just built a new hangar a year ago. He's
I'll
got
have to look
a
at
very
that.
substantial investment there.
The zoning there.
Okay. Many of my questions have already been asked. Starting down at the other end. So I scratched off 4 or 5 of them. The original site was, did you mention 80 acres?
Originally, those would have been two 40-acre
There's
parcels.
2 40s
North and
and
south.
going north and south.
Yeah.
What is the percentage of solar on 80 acres?
This is right now it's 58 acres are left
58 acres
on the 2 parcels.
of panels?
No, I'm sorry. So originally, before any houses were built, these were 240s. This section was sold off, and this section was sold off, so there's now 58
Please refer
acres.
to it directionally, so if someone's listening to
Oh,
this
sorry.
transcript before the vote, they'll know where
Yes.
you're speaking about.
So originally, this was just two square 40s, quarter mile on each side, north and south. Many years ago, this section on the southwest corner was sold off. Later, this area in the northwest was sold off. And so between these 2 parcels, they now total 58 acres. We're proposing solar on 40 of those acres.
40 out of 58.
Correct.
Okay, got that question. You said your company was founded in 2017, so it's still all the original people.
Yes, it is. One thing we're very proud of is we have 30 employees now in 6.5 years of operation. We've only had 4 people leave. One of them was because she got appointed to be director of the Illinois DNR.
Solar companies are notorious like banks, and every time you drive by, there's a new name over the door. I've seen it a dozen times, and the big fish is swallowing up the little fish. So you've been in business since 2017.
Yes.
You got competitors courting you, trying to buy you out?
We are, yes, courting us, but we have no plans to do that. We're a privately held company.
It's a question I had to ask.
Absolutely.
How many years do you think it'll be before you change the name on the door?
We won't. I
Okay.
live here in Illinois. I plan to stay here in Illinois, and I'll give you my card, and you can call me 5 years from now, and it'll still be me.
In 2017 and 2018, I was in the seat you're sitting in now.
Okay.
I put leases together for solar
Okay.
companies. None of them are the same people
I
anymore.
bet.
There's one under construction in Garden Prairie right now that I signed up in 2018, and they're 3 companies away from the company that first signed it.
Yeah.
And the landowner ain't happy. But anyhow, and it's under construction right now, actually. You're applying for how many years of special conditional use?
The project would be 40 years.
40 years?
Yes.
Okay. Is there any fewer number of years that you could work with?
Well, so this is driven by our lease. We have some leases that are 35 years, but that's really it. These projects, the investment is all up front, and then they're just reliable producers of energy after that.
Okay. But I haven't been on this board as long as the rest of the members here, but we got some guys like Little Landscaper, one-man company, comes home with 1 pickup truck, 1 mower, 1 trailer, and he wants a conditional use permit to run a landscaping business. He's asking for 10 years, and we give him 10 years. He can turn the key and drive away, the conditional use is gone. Okay. In my mind, that's a zoning change, because none of us in this room will be around when that permit expires. I know I won't. You're more optimistic than me, but I hope you are. Okay. Without the RECs, the renewable energy credits, would your company even exist?
We have done utility scale. The short answer is yes. We have also developed utility scale projects which require no state subsidies from the state of
If
Illinois.
you're telling me without the government subsidies, you'd still be in business?
Well, the recs are from the state. The federal tax credits are crucial to making any of these projects work in Illinois. There's subsidies from the federal government and from the state government. The larger projects typically don't use any of the state
So
or
if
local
those-
subsidies.
If the state went away, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
You're going to start seeing this in Illinois. You're going to start seeing community solar projects that can actually get built without state subsidies. There are a number of them under construction right now in Illinois. But this project could conceivably.
All right, I'm glad to know that.
Yes.
That is news to me.
It's very
I
news.
thought without the recs.
Well, the number one
They couldn't
reason
get
is because the price of electricity is going up.
Okay. On this particular site, I wear a lot of hats. You know, never seen me wearing them, but I'm just saying it's a phrase. Farming's one of them. Did you ever check in the productivity index of this parcel?
Yes, it's a high PI for this parcel. Its Lisa score would be lower because, of course, it's so proximate to.
It's 121.5. I got the surety maps on my computer. That's drain dirt. It's Class A soils. It's not A+, but it's Class A. About the highest you're going to find in the county is 130, 132. This is getting close. And it's flat and black. We've approved a lot of other solar facilities that were hilly and pasture land and too odd shaped, and you just can't get in there with modern machinery, things like a 24-row planter now. Any farmer would be delighted to get the lease on this piece. Okay, what are the enemies of solar panels?
The enemies of solar panels?
What are the enemies of solar panels?
So if you mean extreme weather, there's a really interesting example that just happened in Nebraska. You might have seen some press on this. Small project, a little bit smaller than this, was hit by baseball-size hail. And those panels are not functional anymore, but they did not shatter. If you look at the photos, and we know the company that owns that project, every one of those panels was removable, doesn't work anymore, but the glass does not shatter. I think it was not very common, you see baseball-size hail, but I thought it was a really interesting example
Well,
of the safety.
obvious is kids on dirt bikes and deer, but you've got fencing all the way around it.
Yeah.
The next most obvious is gravel pits and gravel dust and trucks and gravel mining.
Yep.
You ever put one of these facilities in a gravel pit?
Well, our Rockford project is a closed gravel pit that was turned into a landfill, but no,
So
not
with a couple of hundred trucks coming and going and mining and elevators and screening, it's a dusty neighborhood.
It is.
How many years do you anticipate these panels are going to live versus one without a gravel pit across the street?
We wouldn't see, the dust from the gravel will lower production slightly. With the typical rain, maybe not the rain we had this last June here in northern Illinois, with typical rain, that's not an issue, but we wouldn't see it lowering the lifetime of the panels, which will long outlive the conditional use permit or the lease.
You're
Panels
saying these
themselves-
panels will last 40-plus years?
Absolutely,
Even with the gravel dust?
yes.
Okay. In regards to the discounts given to the community, you mentioned the priority is going to be Riley Township. I can understand that. How many mile radius from the site will you promote these discounts?
All across McHenry County,
The entire McHenry County?
yes. We will put extra effort into working with local officials, working with the McHenry County Environmental Defenders to make sure everyone in Riley has a chance to be a subscriber, but we'll work with anyone in the county.
That's the extent of my questions. Thank you.
I have a few questions.
May I answer Mr. Jersey's
Yes,
questions?
please do.
Thank you. The landing strip next door was granted conditional use in 1972 with no time limit.
No time limit?
No time
On the
limits.
airstrip.
It's been there since 72, at least.
Thank you.
Okay, a few things. You mentioned the grid and this being in the Marengo section of the ComEd grid. And I'm sure you're aware there was like a 2,000 acre mega solar farm that was approved by the county, but they had so many other things that they needed to do. If that was approved before you were, and you said there's some things that you think might not get built, and I'm wondering if you're thinking that might be the one that doesn't get built. I don't know if you want to even say that, but if that was able to then tie into ComEd, how would that affect the grid for your project?
This is a really important point. That large Duke Energy project is connected up to the high voltage lines that come into the Marengo substation. And there's a separate calculation and a separate limit on those 235 kilovolt lines coming in, completely separate from the 34 kilovolt line that leaves the Marengo substation and goes down Illinois 23. It goes deep into...
So not related at all?
Not related. What I was referring to is there's two 20 megawatt projects that we suspect that are probably not going to get built, and we think there'll be sufficient capacity on this lower distribution line level.
So do the community solars, are they easier to get approved from the state? Does the state prefer those over like the ones like we talked about, the point system and hay and, you know, grazing or whatever else they're doing there? Is the community solar easier because it just steps up because of its partnering and providing benefits to the community?
So it's really interesting. The way the state does this is they say, here's a pot of RECs, they call them. Here's a pot of RECs for public school projects. Here's a separate pot of RECs for what they call traditional community solar, which is scored based on grazing and so on and so forth. And then they said, here's a separate pot of RECs for community-driven community solar. That pot is actually pretty small. In traditional community solar for all of ComEd, each year it's 140 megawatts. For community-driven, it's 23. So I will say a year ago, when we did our first applications, we submitted 15 megawatts of projects under community-driven. What happened was that we beat everybody else, and all of our projects were selected. And I think that's because, as an Illinois-based company, perhaps it's a little more straightforward for us to know who these local partners are and find them. So that's how the state does it. They say there's this many RECs for this type, and this type, and then they have a separate scoring system for each of those.
So within the community solar, there's a separate scoring system, and you feel that your project scores really high within that system in order to get approval?
Yeah. Primarily based on local partnerships and the benefits that we're delivering.
Okay, so we looked at screening, and you were talking about native plantings and that sort of thing. And Environmental Defenders has been really strong coming before us and really advocating for the correct plantings and really, you know, approving the plantings that the county decided that we wanted to have in our solar projects. And so as part of your partnering with them, then how does that work? Do you look to them to decide what would be appropriate for screening or for plantings?
Exactly. That is part of our application and a commitment that we'll be making, and that we'll work with them on that. Exactly.
So basically, I just want to understand really then what they will actually be doing besides consulting with you and helping you then connect with the people in the neighborhood. What else will the Defenders be doing as part of this community partnership?
So just like the example I gave with our project in Rockford, we're making a donation to Habitat for Humanity for their work. We'll be making a donation of $60,000 to the Environmental Defenders for work on energy efficiency, behind-the-meter solar projects, other pilot projects, and work that they do in Riley Township.
And it'll all be in Riley Township?
Yes.
This $60,000 that the Defenders does. Well, that's really great. That's really great. Extra. So these bifacial panels, you said allow reflection in winter, is that just off the snow?
Well-
That it's just so bright that it creates more electricity?
That's right. About in the winter, they produce about 15% more energy from the light reflected. In the summer, a little bit less, but there's pretty high albedo off of those native grasses.
And then, can you just summarize the findings from the Cohn-Resnick study for us, just for the benefit of members of the public?
Absolutely. So Cohn-Resnick is a firm that we've worked with. We've worked with them as they've updated these studies over the years. They look at a couple different things. They look at actual sales. So they look at a project that was built, and they find similar houses near the solar project, adjacent to it, and further away, so that they're actually looking at studies. The other really interesting thing that they do is they call assessors all over the state. And one of my favorite statistics you'll find in here is they cannot find a single case where a homeowner called up their assessor and said, I would like my property taxes lowered because there's a solar farm next to me. That could happen, but to date they haven't found one. And when you really talk to Cohn-Resnick about what's going on, what they'll tell you is that above and beyond every other factor, the number one thing that drives property tax values is good schools. Hands down. And if you think about McHenry County and why people move to Lake and McHenry and Boone, there's excellent schools here. The number one driver of excellent schools is both local leadership, but a solid property tax base. I see this so much more starkly in central Illinois, where there's a coal plant or a gas plant or increasingly a wind or solar plant. Tazewell County is the best example of this. Some of those local school districts have all brand new buildings because of the energy facilities, and the others can barely hang on. So ultimately, that's really the finding of Cohn-Resnick. I think this particular project is an interesting one. Directly north of our project is completely going to be an open pit gravel mine run by Ozinga. We believe that will have a stronger impact on property values than our project. The City of Marengo's plans are to make everything to the west of our project and to the south of our project industrial. So I guess I like solar, so it's easy for me to say this, but I think our solar project will be, frankly, a little bit of an oasis surrounded by open pit gravel mines and industrial facilities.
Would you say that your project is going to protect the farmland better than the industrial projects around you?
I'll say this, I think in 40 years it'll be a heck of a lot easier to start farming that beautiful 121 PI ground under our solar panels than over an open pit gravel mine or an Amazon warehouse.
That project in Poplar Grove, is that the one just north of 173?
It is, yep, it's right at that intersection there. That one's 4 megawatts, 36 acres.
And that's currently, in your construction came off of 173 for that one, I think.
That's right,
Okay.
yep.
Okay. And so for this parcel, you're proposing that if you need be, Harmony Road would be your access for construction, but after construction is done, there's really no heavy equipment that would come on this site, correct?
That's right, mostly pickup trucks out there for maintenance and the mowing.
And the mowing, and that's not very frequent at all.
That's
correct?
right.
Okay, I think that's all I had. Does staff have any questions for the petition?
No, am I done on questions?
I do not.
Okay, so at this point, we would take questions on the part of the public, and I'll have my phone set up for 3 minutes for each, and again, you'll just come up, identify yourself, your name and your address, and then you'll have 3 minutes to ask questions of the petitioner. So, first person, go ahead.
I'm actually staff, I'll introduce myself.
Oh, okay, oh, yeah, go ahead.
I'm Ray Beats, I'm the permit manager from McHenry County Division of State Transportation, so I am county staff. So if I may, Molly, if you could you pull up your revised plan that shows the alternate access to Harmony Road? Thank you. I would assume that Planning Development has provided the committee and hopefully the petitioner with the McHenry County Division of Transportation memorandum with my name on it via Ray Beats, permit manager, dated June 30th, 2023. Okay. I just wanted to make note that this is the first time that as permit manager, myself or DOT has seen a proposal for alternate access from Harmony Road. That's the reason why it's not mentioned in my memorandum. Several questions. If access were denied to Anthony Road, and if access were to be granted to Harmony Road, where would the utility point of interconnection occur, on Anthony Road or on Harmony Road? I believe you answered that question, but for clarification, could you repeat it?
We would still interconnect on Anthony Road.
Regardless of where your access is?
That's where the three-phase line for ComEd is, yes.
Okay. Second question, do you have any information on the approximate number of heavy equipment and heavy truckload trips per day to the site during the construction phase?
Yes, you typically don't see more than 2 to 3 semi-loads on any typical day, and that's not very common in delivering both the skid steers and smaller equipment or delivery of panels or other equipment.
Would you be able to provide that information possibly at a later date?
Absolutely. That would be part of our work with both the county and or the township on our road use agreement and building permit.
Third question, would a temporary construction access to Harmony Road for a limited time of period of time during construction be an option with site access for the remaining life of the solar farm located on Anthony Road? In other words, temporary construction access on Harmony, once you're done with construction, that gets totally removed, and you would then have for the next 40 years, whatever, your site access for the, and I know how this works, once a month, the tech comes out and checks the panels. Is that an option? Is that acceptable?
So we actually think that would be ideal. We didn't want to get into that level of detail. We think it needs to be talked through in the building permit. I'd note that 40 years from now during decommissioning, we probably have to put that temporary in, but that's absolutely something we'd love to work with the county and the township on.
Okay, another question. I'm almost done. Are you aware that with the proposed change in use on the portion of property, because there's 2 pins involved, are you aware that with the proposed change in use on the portion of property that fronts Harmony Road, the right-of-way dedication along Harmony Road is required per county ordinance? And how does that right-of-way dedication affect your required site setbacks?
We have enough space here that we'd be able to accommodate. We noted in your report, the township alluded to this around snow as well, potential additional right-of-way, and we'd absolutely be able to accommodate that.
Those were my questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bees. You're not at our hearings that often. I didn't recognize you. I'm sorry for that.
That's okay.
Okay, so at this time, anyone from the public that would like to ask a question, you're welcome to come up to the microphone.
Hi, I'm Jamie Mindel, and I am a Marengo resident that lives in the L-shape that they're trying to cover, basically, 21015 Anthony Road. One of my biggest concerns that I actually wrote you guys a letter as well, and it's in there, but how do your panels differ and the transponders differ in the noise? Because my husband works for ComEd, and 24 transformers is not silent.
It would be 1 transformer that would take the energy up to the 12 kilovolts. I was referring to the inverters, which turn the energy from AC to DC. They are pretty small in size, and the noise that comes from them is a small fan for cooling.
So a continuous humming.
If you are right next to it, at 325 feet, you would not hear them past the fence line, and will be in compliance with the state ordinances, the county ordinance, which are quite fulsome on this.
Also with the weather damage, as far as the property, you'll notice it lines my property. That whole back corner, if you are looking at the south east corner, I have a whole tree line. Those branches break off in huge storms all the time, and I have been kind enough to clear those. They land on those solar panels. Who's paying for them?
We would. There will be a 25-foot buffer to our fence, and then another 25-foot buffer to the panels. And so Even if some tree limbs made it past our screening, past the fence, I wouldn't anticipate them really doing any damage to the panels, and that'd be our responsibility inside the fence.
Okay, and you are aware that the wind tunnels that go through there, so that a tree flying into there is actually possible?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Okay. Also, the flight path I wanted to talk about. You said you spoke to Randy, which is the one to the east side. However, did you talk to Mike Kellner across the street? He also flies planes as well as has a crop duster that goes across, and he does fly north to south to crop dust because you cannot go east to west because of his building there. And how is that going to happen when you guys have a fence line going in?
Do you guys know if we talked to that?
He wasn't available that day.
Again, if, we've seen the neighbor to the east did not have concerns. He's stayed within his 160-foot wide parcel and runway on all of his flights. But if this is something that the ZBA or the county would like us to, we anticipate including this in our building permit process, and would be happy to work on more details about that.
Great. And then for the maintenance, one of the things I wanted to touch base on is, again, I was with Mr. Snable, but you're planting weeds. Who's taking care of them?
Oh, we are, 100%.
But you said end of season. They grow all season. So who's taking care of this?
We are. When you plant a pollinator-friendly ground cover, you do need to maintain it during the year, pull out any noxious weeds. What we're planting is natives approved by our partners, the McHenry County Environmental Defenders and the county. But especially in those early years, you need to pull out any weeds that grow up, and then the mowing happens at the end of the season just to remove all that dry material.
The mowing under the panels?
Yes. Yep.
And you have somebody coming in and doing that just one time a year?
Earlier in the season, especially in the earlier years, it might be multiple, but once you have that pollinator ground cover, you do that at the end of the season.
And you have ground cover that actually grows? Because
What time is it?
Oh, sorry, I thought this was a continuation.
Does anyone else have any questions for the petitioner? Yes, please.
Lori Bohart, 22008 Grange Road. We live further west. We understand that there was a proposed solar panels for the few thousand acres on Pleasant Grove Road and to the west, northwest of us. Asked that the board consider that there's too much going on farmland in McHenry County with solar panels. So the one question following up with hers is about the mowing. Once a year or twice a year certainly will not keep out noxious weeds. Teasel is a very problematic weed, and I don't feel that the county is, I guess I'm supposed to be asking questions.
That's right.
Do you agree that teasel is a very noxious weed?
It's a horrible
Do you
weed.
agree that thistles are very noxious weeds? And do you agree that they should be maintained and prohibited even further than once or twice a year mowing?
100%, and especially in the early years as that ground cover is getting established, we will have crews out there much more often.
Very good. Okay, the disposal or the decommissioning plan, how many years do you have to decommission a 40-year parcel?
So before,
After that 40 years, how many years do you have? What is the time limit to decommission a parcel?
per our lease, we have to get it done in 9 months. And an
In 9
important
months.
part of this is before we can even begin construction, we'll place a bond with McHenry County to be able to cover the removal of the system.
Okay, and you also are setting up this community agreement with the environmental defenders, so they're getting $60,000. Is there any reason or any other non-profit agency that you have contacted that could be eligible to receive funding in the same manner that the environmental defenders are getting?
Number one, our work with the defenders will be to essentially re-grant most of that funding to the school district or other projects in Riley Township. But I will give you my card, and Hal and I would be happy to learn about other organizations.
So if the city of Marengo, the village, or the Riley Township, or the county, other agencies want to get in on that agreement, you can, they need to contact you, correct?
And we'd be thrilled.
And is it a one-time payment to them, or is it an ongoing 40-year commitment?
One time after the project's built.
Okay, and per the state law, is that a one-time commitment, or is it eligible through these state programs to continue those through several years?
The subscription savings will continue on. The additional community benefits are meant to be upfront.
One time?
Yes.
So the county, city, they, you would encourage them to contact you to get that funding?
Yes.
Okay. And the boundaries, the mowing of the boundaries, so you have the setback, and then you're gonna plant the perennials and everything. Then between the road and these perennials, what's gonna be there?
So in the right-of-way, if the county or the township is maintaining that, they continue to do that. In some counties and townships, we end up maintaining all of that, but wherever that right-of-way is to our fence, that's us.
And that'll be mowed once or twice a year?
Oh, no, that'll be mowed more often.
And we'll submit a full landscape monitoring and maintenance plan that will be with the county and abides by their requirements that they have in the ordinance already. So there'll be specific requirements that we'll have to meet.
Okay, I had more questions, but my time is up.
Anyone else have questions? Yes, go ahead.
Excuse me, Marcia Lockwood, and we own our farm, our family owns land in Broderick Township. If you would, this new owner, you will rent from him?
Yes.
Under what, would that still remain ag, or would it go commercial or industrial, or well, it wouldn't be residential? So your real estate taxes would go up?
So it'll stay zoned agricultural, but it'll be taxed at a special rate for solar, which is about 20 times higher than agricultural taxes.
Okay, did you answer my question?
Anyone else have questions for the petitioner? Go ahead, sir.
Hi, my name is Bob Small. I'm at 2005 Route 23 in Harvard. When you're putting this in, what are the hours of instruction going to be? I mean, I understand there's pounding of metal into the ground, which is fairly noisy. The neighbors, what are your hours?
Yes, the McHenry County ordinance governs that, typically sun up to sundown. The only noisy part during construction is when the pilings are driven into the ground 8 to 12 feet, depending on the geotech results, and that usually takes about 3 to 5 days.
Okay, but you're probably willing to work with neighbors to decrease the sunrise, the sundown requirement for the...
Absolutely. We have projects inside cities, all over states. We have an agreement with the cemetery that if they ever have a funeral going on, we'll stop construction. So absolutely. And I think Riley Township would be how we would coordinate that.
What's the purpose of the vegetation buffer?
Well, there has to be a setback from these projects per the state law and the McHenry County ordinance. We think maintaining a good vegetative cover is really important there. We can't let that become a seed bank for...
But is it supposed to be, I mean, it's just to protect it from becoming weeds, or is it to help with the visual aspect of what you're building?
It's the visual aspect. It's also that if you put your fence right on a property line, you're essentially robbing some land from that neighboring farm owner. He's not going to run his combine, 2 inches from your fence. So it's that aspect, it's the visual, but all building codes have some level of setback typically, whether it's an industrial facility or solar.
Okay. I notice that you do comply with the state law to the minimum, and that you are going to be neighbors with people here. It seems that it might be possible to put a bigger buffer in so that the solar panels are a little more than 100 feet from their homes. Is that something that you are willing to consider?
We actually already did. Our site plan, and you'll notice it up there, our northern boundary is about 25 feet further to the south, and then on the east and the west, you can see the open space that we pulled in there next to our 2 closest residential neighbors.
So you made adjustments after talking to the neighbors?
We actually made that before talking to them.
You've made no adjustments since talking to the neighbors?
The neighbor to the east didn't ask for any. He actually has some very beautiful arborvitaes, almost all up and down there. And then on the east, we haven't had that specific request.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Yes, sir.
If I may, one real quick.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if it was asked. Again, Ray Beats, Permit Manager, McHenry County Division of Transportation. The part of the southerly parcel, Pan 009, I believe it is, that's not part of the solar panels themselves, adjacent to northerly, then between the panels and Harmony Road, will that continue to be farmed?
It will, and sir, I noticed in your report that you requested that we get rid of the field road access off of Harmony Road. That's something we wanted to talk about. One option we would have would be to leave some access for our landowner along the setback area. But that's something we'd like to work on, because the plan is still that that land would be farmed.
Understood, and again, like I said before, the comments that you received for this hearing, we had not yet seen.
Yeah.
That was my question.
Yes.
May I go again?
No, we have 3 minutes per person. You're allowed to give your comments, though, in the end. He's a staff person. Yeah.
Can comment?
That'll be later. That'll be later. In a little bit, you'll have your opportunity for that. So if there's no other questions, at this time, we'll go to the report from staff.
Okay.
Ms. Hanlon.
Thank you. So I don't really have a lot to add on these. Solar farms, you guys are familiar with the law. And we did verify that all the minimum standards are met on this.
By the state, for the state side.
For the state and the UDO minimums have been met. I think important is to look at the future land use map. So the future land use designation of this property is for agriculture. And everything around is for the industrial businesses. So staff doesn't have any issues with the project. We think that the minimum standards are met, and we will be happy to work with them on the landscaping requirements, the specific materials, when they come through at the building permit process.
Does anyone on the board have questions for Ms. Hanlon? Okay. So at this time, now's your chance to make comments. Anyone from the public that would like to give your comments, again, you have 3 minutes and you'll need to identify yourself.
I'll go first. His hand was up.
I guess he jumped his phone away. Good afternoon, Dave Diamond, 602 Bauman, Marengo, Riley Township Highway Commissioner. So, first comment was the ZBA P&D staff. This is the first opportunity I've had to come to one of these. We've always been invited, in addition to staff plat review. This is a new process today, so we have to sit through a lot of testimony that isn't necessarily of interest to the road district, but of local concern, of course. I think this process is flawed. I understand that your hands are effectively tied by the state of Illinois in feeling that there's a mandate that these solar installations be installed across the county, but I still think as staff, as Mr. Beats has demonstrated from McDOT, myself with Riley Township, we need a forum where we can address these concerns as well. And this is just directed to you folks. I don't know when this decision was made to change this protocol, but traditionally through the years, we've most enjoyed that opportunity, come into staff plat review, work through the nitty gritty. Some of the things that we've talked about today, Mr. Carson, folks from Trajectory have brought up, could have been handled before. So that's just my comment on that.
Part of that, Mr. Beats, is that the timeline that the state has given us too is so much shortened that when we have to provide a hearing and when the county has to approve it, would that be correct?
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct, because the state has mandated that we, from the time these guys apply to this hearing is commenced, is 45 days. So that doesn't give us the time to take it through staff plat as we used to. But hopefully you did receive an email soliciting your written comments. so that we could include those in the staff report?
I did after some research into that, and thankfully that, we had some dialogue, we found out about this, because otherwise, there just isn't time. Township Highway Commissioner's position for me is a part-time position, I work another job beside. So anyway, that's just my comment on that. I understand the state regs, I didn't know that timeline was that tight. As far as folks at Trajectory, Mr. Carson, appreciate your consideration on the entrance. That's a significant concern, we talked with the other gentleman at our meeting about, Anthony Road is effectively a farm-to-market road. It's not designed for that traffic. We are impacted by the local gravel mining and asphalt production, concrete, things like that from time to time. But generally, the trucks will stay on the county and the state road. So, we would like to see that entrance be on Harmony Road, for this project. As it's defined, commercial solar generation, commercial implies business. There's a lot of residences on Anthony Road. They shouldn't be impacted or subjected to this commercial traffic. So we'll talk more, about that as this progresses, but appreciate the opportunity.
Also, just to clarify with staff, so even though staff plat did not have the opportunity before this hearing, in the process of getting a building permit, people will have the opportunity to address a lot of those same issues, correct?
That's correct.
So if this is granted by the state, then the transportation and all those other entities will still be working through so that the process will be, it's just in a different order.
It is in a different order, and we do ask for written comments from each member individually of the staff plat review committee, since we can no longer get them on the agenda for an actual meeting and pass those along to you. But yes, this, the state law kind of, what the purpose of the state law was to not encumber so much into the land use process. So if these minimum standards are met, then the land use has to be approved, and then there's more on the back end, or the building permit portion. That's where our stormwater will ask these guys for a drain tile survey and those sorts of things that in the past you were used to seeing up front.
Thank you. Anyone else wanting to make their comment? Yes, sir.
I'm going to jump in. Paul Brown, Hebron Township. I'm with the Mid-America Carpenters Regional Council. We did partner up with Trajectory on this and projects, and I just want to inform the public and the board that we're an organization along with other crafts already here that our training is state-of-the-art. We have certifications for the install of this product. And we're actually going to with McHenry County, we have roughly around 1,000 members roughly, and their families would be supported by this construction project and many others. I do want to say that other projects have gone through McHenry County, and with our information on visiting job sites, that the labor that came in was out of state. And they were not making wages that we make here because our costs are a lot higher. But to have a living wage in McHenry County and other areas, we feel that it's important that we use residents who live here, who support your taxes and the schools and everything. So it's important that these guys have actually reached out to us and are very, very important to building these projects. And I think you should look at that and study that. The fact is, keep it in town, and we'll use our carpenters here and other crafts to perform this project. I also want to say the training. We have training centers throughout the area, 3 states actually, and we actually have the training certification for our members. I think it's important, so they understand that fact that, again, don't keep it in-house, keep it in McHenry County, and these guys do a great job for reaching out to us and other crafts so that it goes with organized labor in the state of Illinois and especially McHenry County. So, thank you.
Anyone else like to speak? Yep, sure, come on up.
I'd like my recognition again. Lori Bohart, Grange Road, Marengo. I would like to know, or I would like to ask, if I understood that the CPI for the bonding is that continue for a 40-year CPI for the cost of inflation?
Yes, we have to work with the county to make sure that bond follows inflation.
Okay, and did I understand when you said that you were going to reconstitute the agricultural farmland, the topsoil, when you have already put pilings in there and concrete and everything, you are required to remove those within 9 months? Then are you required to re-add black dirt to that?
No, the original black dirt will not be removed. There won't be any necessity for any grading on the site. We don't use concrete for the pilings. The pilings are just driven.
Just driven right into the gravel that's there?
Yeah,
but-
and some of that will come up when they're pulled out. I wouldn't deny that.
Okay, and then will you reestablish the farmland as it is today, growing beans on it?
Well, that will be up to the landowner. The entire thing's probably going to be
So the
surrounded by...
liability falls on the landowner as to the quality of the
What's-
soils after the 40 years?
Well, no, how we leave it is our responsibility, and we have to follow our agreement with the landowner and the county, but what's done with the site afterwards will be up to the landowner.
And currently today, are there places to dispose of these solar panels?
Yes, there's
Where's the landfill?
we have a slide on that. Wisconsin has a growing recycling industry, and be happy to give you a...
So it doesn't go into a landfill, it goes into recycling facilities?
Yep.
Okay, and those are none in Illinois?
There's a number of them in development right now.
Ogle County,
disposing
can't do it in
these.
Ogle County, you can't do it at Rockford landfill.
I don't know those specific details.
Contaminated waste goes into Rockford landfill. Is it considered contaminated waste?
No, it's aluminum and glass and vast majority.
Okay, and how much heat does this 58 acres of solar panels, does that raise the heat of the ground or the air directly adjacent to the properties, or
It
on that property?
It does not.
Okay, thank you.
Does anyone else want to make a comment? Go ahead.
Good afternoon. Excuse me. My name is Erin Kennedy. I'm the Executive Director of the Environmental Defenders of McHenry County. Thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. The Environmental Defenders have supported the installation of community solar and utility scale solar in the county for many years. The Defenders have given the board our most recent position paper indicating the reasons why we believe that solar is a good fit for McHenry County. The environmental benefits of installing solar in our area are numerous, and they're fully outlined in that position paper. And I believe I heard that you guys will all have access to that after the meeting today. Just to list a few, I know we've talked a lot, or people have made a lot of comments about it, but solar provides a reliable income for landowners and farmers in the area that allows them to continue farming in spite of kind of unreliable agricultural markets. And when done correctly, and I know this is brought up a lot too, with fully planted, low-profile native species, solar preserves valuable topsoil, it improves drainage, and improves pollinator habitat, as well as small wildlife habitats as well. The community solar provides valuable clean energy sources for residents and local businesses who are unable to install panels on their rooftops or their place of work, and it keeps our energy local. With regard to this particular project, the Defenders support the installation of community-driven community solar, and on this particular site because it will benefit Riley Township, we believe. When construction is completed, there will be no increase in traffic, no increase in population to support, and a substantial tax benefit to the community without the burden of infrastructure. We trust that the Trajectory Energy Partners will install and remain low-profile native plants to the utmost standards, and these are developed by the Illinois Department of Natural Resources in McHenry County. Because they have experience in installing and maintaining these projects throughout Illinois, the Defenders have worked with Trajectory to help educate the community about community solar, and given their track record, we believe that they have the best interests of the county and will offer ongoing benefits to the community in the form of decreased energy service costs and ongoing financial investments. It is our understanding that Trajectory Energy Partners has conducted extensive outreach, and I know you guys have talked a lot about this, including an open house that was given at the Marengo Union Library District, knocking on doors, attending school board meetings, attending township meetings, and direct outreach to the community. This project itself has been adjusted to accommodate feedback from neighbors, the road district, and McHenry County. Just to sum up, with this significant outreach and the commitment to the community, this is the type of project that we feel is needed in our community, and therefore we ask the zoning board to approve this project. Thank you.
Okay, is there anyone else that would like to speak? Do you have any closing statement?
No, we thank you for your time.
Okay. As you know, we have only 5 members here, and you're entitled to 7 votes. And I know you talked about providing an FAA study regarding something that was brought up. I'm wondering about whether we vote today or we wait and get that, and then you can have 7 members to vote. You need 5 affirmative votes to go to the county board with an approval.
We fully plan to continue to work with the staff in the county during the building permit process, and we'd prefer to vote today.
Okay. So at this time, we will move on to close the hearing portion and move on to the voting portion of this meeting. Again, this is on application 2023-028. The applicant is Plowshare Solar LLC, and the request is for a conditional use permit to allow for a commercial solar energy facility. The property consists of 58 7/10 acres and is located on the south side of Anthony Road and the north side of Harmony Road, approximately 1,500 feet west of Maple Street in Briley Township. We have some proposed conditions by staff. I think those are in our staff report.
Linnea, I did put a revised sheet on your table there. All I did was change the date of the site plan, however.
Okay, let me move all these things together.
And they're up on the screen as well.
Oh. Per reading there, sometimes it's just, okay. Okay, so the conditions. Number 1, the conditional use shall have no time limit unless the use is abandoned, as specified in 16.560.030.pp.4 of the McHenry County Unified Development Ordinance. Number 2, site development shall be in substantial conformance with the site plan prepared by Trajectory Energy Partners dated July 21st, 2023, and received by the Department of Planning and Development on July 24th, 2023, and it is attached. Number 3, the decommissioning plan shall be applicable in part as well as whole. If any portion of the commercial solar energy facility ceases to perform its intended function for more than 12 consecutive months, that portion of the facility shall be decommissioned in compliance with all the terms of the decommissioning plan. Number 4, a McHenry County stormwater management permit shall be secured prior to construction. Any damaged drainage tile should be repaired at the expense of the petitioner and in a manner satisfactory to the Water Resources Division Manager. Number 5, a detailed landscape plan illustrating compliance with required landscape screening standards shall be approved by the zoning enforcement officer prior to issuance of construction/building permit. Number 6, fencing shall be provided in compliance with the National Electrical Code as applicable. The use of barbed wire is prohibited. Setting fence posts in concrete is prohibited, except for gate posts and where otherwise required for stability. Number 7, all requirements of McHenry County Unified Development Ordinance 16.56.030.pp as amended, subject to State of Illinois Public Act 102-1123 shall be met or exceeded unless specifically amended by this conditional use permit. Number 8, all other federal, state, and local laws shall be met. Are there any other proposed conditions?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would like to ask for a condition.
Go ahead, Mr. Schnabel.
Can I give a little context first before I ask?
Well, let's say I have it, and then you can do that under your discussion. Let's do that.
All right, I'll do it under my discussion. I would like to ask that we propose a condition requiring all system construction equipment and equipment deliveries be provided off of Harmony Road via a temporary construction entrance and/or driveway.
Is there a second for this condition?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion, Mr. Schnabel?
Yeah, discussion. 40 years from now, many of us, I'm sure, won't be around, but I can virtually guarantee you that since Marengo has annexed virtually adjacent to this property, that more than likely in a short period of time, a number of years, Marengo will annex land beyond the solar system over to Maple Road or wherever they end up. So therefore, I'm only asking for the condition to cover initial system construction, not decommissioning. That is my thinking.
Any other discussion on this proposal?
One moment.
Sure.
Like I previously referenced, I could use a staff assistant to my left. The comments mentioned in terms of the road and township is after this construction is $1,257, and not to be too facetious in 1 year, that doesn't do much in the purchase of salt or cold mix or repair. And I am also of the opinion that the road limit, though not entered into the record of Harmony Road, far exceeds that of Anthony Road, and I'm supportive of the condition.
Any other discussion?
Are we able to
Yes.
add anything to that? I just want to note, I think we're happy to accommodate that condition, but I just wanted to just kind of mention that we do intend to be in further contact, obviously, with Mr. Beats, the Department of Transportation, and Mr. Diamond, and really want to be able to work out those issues in the correct way with them. And I just want to make sure that anything that we add in the conditions for, as far as the special use permit, doesn't prohibit us from working with them and finding the best solution that, that works with those departments.
So my question is for staff, would this condition impact that?
It could, if you say that construction has to come off Anthony Road, and then McDOT decides that they're not gonna allow that temporary permit, then essentially they can't build their project. Harmony Road, you know what I mean.
Okay. Any other discussion? Then I will call for the vote on this extra condition. Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes?
Ms. Gardner?
No.
Mr. Jers?
Yes.
And I will vote no, so this condition is 3-2. Does that mean it's approved if we only have three? I don't think that's binding with 3-2. This is an unusual situation because we only have 5.
Yeah. So you would need 5 to recommend.
So the motion fails. So at this time, I would take a motion to accept the 8 conditions that have been approved.
So moved.
Okay, it's been moved by Ms. Gardner, second, do I have a second?
I will second as you're looking towards me.
Okay, moved by Ms. Gardner, second by Mr. Cozen, to approve the conditions. Discussion?
No.
Okay. So I'll call for the vote. Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Mr. Jers?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. So the conditions are approved, the 8 conditions are approved, 5-0. At this time, I would take a motion for the request for the conditional use.
So moved.
Moved by Ms. Gardner, do I have a second?
I won't break up the partnership. I'll second.
Okay, discussion, Ms. Gardner.
This property is in Riley Township. This petitioner, or applicant, what we call you now, seems to be very experienced in the business that they're in, and has had quite a bit of success at it. I'm heartened by the outreach that was performed by this company, and actively seeking the opinions of neighbors and the input of all the various entities involved. I also think it's unusual, at least I think it's unusual, that this company goes into partnership with various entities, partly to secure their spot, but also it's very good for the area. I like the idea of using local union people. I think that this company will follow through, I hope, with everything that they have talked about and not promised, but have, expressed interest in doing with this particular site. As you know, we are pretty limited in what we can approve and not approve as far as solar facilities on this board. This, I would say, is one of the more positive experiences that I've had over, 40 or 50 of these hearings of solar farms, and I am in favor of it.
Mr. Jers?
We there? Yeah. Well said.
Thank you.
I kind of agree with her. These guys are top-notch. They've had answers to all of our questions. Experienced, yes. But in Riley Township and west of this site, we've got over 2,200 acres already approved for solar. Do the math on that, that's 4 square miles. I think we've reached a saturation point. Reluctantly, I'm voting no.
Mr. Schnabel?
Okay, let me just say initially that I had some serious questions about the application regarding the airstrip. When I look in my own analysis of the safety of people involved here, you're looking at more or less the individual pilot himself that's assuming the risk, if there is one, of takeoff or landing next to that strip. If there's no proven FAA restrictions, it generally speaking doesn't represent a large hazard to the general public. Like, for example, one recent proposal that we had was involving a couple sets of train tracks. That represented a safety hazard to a lot of people, in my opinion. I don't find that same problem here. If the airstrip owner has no problem with it, I don't know why I should, other than I was concerned about the general public, so I guess we'll put that issue to rest. I'm very disappointed that my condition requiring the access from Harmony Road did not pass. I don't see what the harm in doing that would be. And if they don't want to do that and comply with that, and I know that you expressed an interest in doing so, which I appreciate, but I would be very happy with that condition being in place that would restrict the construction completely, because as Mr. Jur has indicated, I mean, we do reach a saturation point at a certain point. But putting that aside, much of what's been said I do agree with, and I will support the petition.
Mr. Cozen.
The amount of information that has been presented by this applicant has given me pause on more than one occasion, especially to collect my thoughts. As one in more of the urbanized townships of the county Algonquin, I do have a certain familiarity not only of solar panels in that the majority of the properties around me have them on their roofs, but more to the point, in a past life, I am well aware of the distractions and destruction that could happen with thistles and wild garlic, and knew that they were on the state list of noxious weeds, notwithstanding that the Agricultural Extension Office recommends elderberry as a native shrub, as well as red oyster as a state flower. But saying that, my colleagues mentioned about roads, and I didn't expect to have such a deep dive into a township discussion, especially given the seasonal posting that may occur at the most awkward time of your construction period. But those things have been demonstrated in the record of being worked through with the talent that has been brought forward and the efforts by staff, et cetera, that I too will be supporting this petition.
And I would just add a few things. First of all, we have approved several solar farms, and many of those will not get built, and there's no assurance that this 2,000-acre solar farm would be built as well. I think we have to look at each solar farm, you know, as the project that is presented to us, and I think this is a good one. I think that this is a good company. I like the fact that they're willing to work with Marengo if at, you know, at some point Marengo annexes out this way to allow them access for water and sewer along the roadway on Anthony Road or Harmony Road, whatever that would be. I love the fact that this is community partner and using the Defenders. The Defenders will get $60,000 to use for projects within Riley Township. And the Defenders have been so good at advocating for native plantings, for pollinator species, for just a good mix of plants that will benefit the environment and then allow for the rainwater to then be really go into the soil and recharge the aquifer versus running off. I really think that this will protect the farmland. Getting taxes that are 20 times what is currently assessed for this farmland will really help, like Riley Township School District, you know, that's a rural school district. This is going to be a huge help in increasing the revenue for that school district as well as the other taxing bodies in this area. I think they've met the state standards. I think they meet, the land use plan calls for this to be agricultural, and solar farms are included as an agricultural use, and I think it's compatible with the surrounding agriculture, and it's certainly not going to impact the gravel pits that are to the north. I think, you know, compared to that, gravel pits, I mean, this has no noise really at all. And once it's constructed, it's just really so passive. And I've driven by solar farms that have been in production for a couple years, and just seeing the flowers and the beauty there, I just think it's not at all something that that I wouldn't want next to me, that I think it's just really a green energy source that's good for the community, and our county has a stated policy that they want to encourage this, and so I think they've met the standards. I think this would be good for the community, and I'm in favor of the request. So at this time, I'll call for the vote. Ms. Gardner?
Yes.
Mr. Cozen?
Yes.
Mr. Schnabel?
Yes.
Mr. Jers?
No.
And I will vote yes, so this will go to the county board with 4-1. So this is, because it doesn't have 5 votes, this will go with no recommendation. So at this time, the hearing is closed.
Yes, indeed.